My name is Trip Gorman, and in this episode of Semilla.VC, I sat down with Ali Jamal. Ali Jamal is currently the founding director of First Check Ventures. He's done more than 100 syndicate deals with 3,200 unique limited partners. We discussed how he built this SPV empire, as well as his time working as a performance marketer for Rappi in Bogotá, Colombia, as well as for PayClip in Mexico City. We discussed all this and more in this episode of Semilla.VC.
Okay. Ali, could you start by telling the audience a little bit more about yourself and your impressive work history in Latin America?
Thanks. Yeah. I've had so many things that's impressive. I'm originally from the US. I grew up in the Midwest, and then I did my undergrad and master's at Stanford University, an undergrad in economics, and then a master's in statistics. I actually started my career as an investment banker. So I did mergers and acquisitions for 3 years in New York. And then I moved back to Silicon Valley and started to work as a data scientist. I really wanted to get more hands-on and really kind of dig into analytical questions. So I spent the next 3 years working as a data scientist, and I really loved it, but I felt like I wanted to kind of dig in even more and have more of an impact to kind of really impact customers and understand what was going on with them. And so starting in 2013, I kind of made the jump into product and growth, and I've been there ever since. So I was a growth product manager at Zynga, the mobile gaming company, and then went to a competitor of theirs called RockU. I was at RockU for about 4 years, helped them grow from 40 people up to 400. And then in 2017, I got recruited by Agoda, and I moved to Bangkok, Thailand to lead their marketing innovation team. I took over their mobile growth and then their display marketing, and then all their special projects and new initiatives. So they were launching their flights product and then their Airbnb competitor, and then ended up basically taking over their marketing for China on both the brand and performance marketing side. So I had a couple teams in China on brand and performance marketing, and then within Bangkok, I had kind of the mobile growth and display marketing and these other special projects teams. I was at Agoda for a couple of years, and I saw the rise of a lot of really interesting things happening in Asia, and particularly the rise of the super app, and had watched kind of Gojek and Grab in Southeast Asia, and then spending all this time in China, saw the rise of Didi and Meituan there, and wanted to be part of the next big super app, and had looked kind of globally and found Rappi, and it just looked super interesting. So I reached out to the founders and ended up having some really great conversations, and in 2019 ended up joining them to lead their performance marketing team. A few weeks later, I think actually SoftBank ended up making their big $1 billion investment into Rappi. And I ended up having a team kind of across LATAM focused on acquisition and retention marketing. And then I ended up actually getting recruited by a startup in Mexico called PayClip. And so I moved to Mexico City in January of 2020 to lead PayClip's growth and performance marketing teams. PayClip became Mexico's largest fintech and first fintech unicorn. They make it easier for merchants across LATAM to accept credit card payments, which I thought was a really impactful business. Basically, I moved to Mexico City January of 2020, had an Airbnb for a few weeks, kind of organizing my life there, moved into my new apartment on Sunday, and Thursday we started working from home permanently because of COVID-19. And so started working from home and ended up kind of having all this extra free time on my hands, right? I'd been used to kind of traveling to 10, 12, 15 countries a year and going out and exploring Bogotá and Bangkok and Mexico City, and all of a sudden you can't go out and explore, and you can't really even leave your apartment, right? I'm kind of just exploring my bedroom and then the living room and the kitchen, right? And I kind of needed something else to do. I'd been an angel investor on the side for quite a while, probably more than a decade at that point, and have been in several other angel syndicates on AngelList. And I thought it looked interesting. And so I reached out to some of the different syndicate leads and, asked them about their experience and what they did to get set up. And, they basically encouraged me to go and try it for myself. And so July of 2020, I ended up launching First Check Ventures as really just kind of a nights and weekends side project to keep myself busy during the pandemic. Ended up kind of growing that and left my job at the end of 2021 to kind of focus on angel investing full time. So I moved to Puerto Rico in January, or I guess end of December of 2021. And I'm now based in San Juan and kind of focused on First Check and trying to be as early and as helpful to founders as possible.
I want to ask some more questions about building a robust AngelList syndicate. You've done more than 100 deals with more than 3,200 unique limited partners. So I have 3 questions for you about that. How did you attract more than 3,200 limited partners? How did you get so many allocations? And what else should aspiring syndicate creators know about running an ultra successful syndicate like yours?
I ended up getting a lot of LPs just because I was actually outreaching directly, right? And I think it's one of the things that VCs always harp on to their startups, and so you kind of drink your own medicine, right? You have to go and do customer interviews and sales calls and get people comfortable. So those first few months of First Check, I wasn't doing any deals. I was really just out there talking to people. I was reaching out to, ex-colleagues, friends, people I knew from college, my cousins, my roommate from college's cousin, right? Like wherever I could go and find people, I would just say, hey, it's Ali, wanted to reconnect. Everybody's kind of bored during the pandemic. Do you have a half hour to chat? And, some people were obviously busy with their own lives, but some people said, hey, yeah, let's catch up. And I would kind of say, hey, I'm thinking about starting, this new syndicate. I've been an angel investor on the side. I'm seeing some cool deals. I want to invest in these things, but it's easier if we do it as a group. Do you want to maybe look at some deals and see what it's like? And there's no upfront financial commitment. I'm putting my own money into every deal, and I only make money if you make money. I'm not charging a management fee. And so like our interests are very much aligned, and it's just a easy way to get some more angel exposure. So, one by one, some people said no, but a lot of people started to say yes, and they started to join. And then, I started finding some cool companies, and I did a few really, really great deals. And, it kind of just flowed from there that, we were doing some cool deals. I was talking to a lot of people. More and more people saw these cool deals. They reached out saying, hey, I want to hear more about what you're doing. People in the syndicate were telling their friends or telling their cousin or their sister or their brother, their colleagues, right? And so having a lot more conversations with people, and it kind of just expanded out. And so, I think the number one piece of advice that I would give to anybody that's trying to start a syndicate is kind of one, bring, get to know the people who are investing and why they're investing. Two, understand who you are and what value you add. So I think the fact that I'd had these experiences in markets like Southeast Asia, in markets like Latin America, that I'd been working in startups and seeing big scale companies, that these companies were now having people leave to go and do their own startups. I was just getting access to a lot of things that people weren't getting access to. So having that kind of unique pipeline of deals and, high quality deals, right? So I think having that access to high quality deals is really kind of what separates, a great syndicate lead from the rest. At the end of the day, right? That's what people want access to. So I think it's a matter of kind of both having that really strong network, and then I kiss a lot of frogs. I end up looking at probably close to 300 to 400 decks a week. I talk to 50, 60 founders every week. And out of those 50, 60 founders, I maybe invest in one. Right? And that's after another 3, 4, 5 calls. So, continue to try to find the best people to back and the best startups out there. I think really kind of separates you. And I think that then resonates to answer your kind of question too. When founders enjoy working with you, when they see that process and they can start kind of hearing good things about you from the ecosystem, it's much easier to get an allocation. It's much easier for them to start to reach out with you. So if you kind of treat everybody with respect and you listen to a lot of people and you build those relationships, and then over time your pipeline kind of just continues to grow and grow. So I think that answers all of those questions, but let me know if there's something I forgot to dive into more.
You did answer all of them. I'd be interested to know now, what's your investment thesis and what rubric do you use to vet your potential investments?
So when I first started out, I used to say it's kind of just whatever I like. But I think after kind of running it for a couple of years and, seeing 10,000 decks, I started to realize more about what I like. And so I am typically trying to invest in like ridiculously early. So I want to be investing ridiculously early in companies that are solving big problems with simple solutions. And I want proven business models where the company has traction and the founders know how to execute. And ultimately, I want to put my own money into it, right? So those are kind of the big criteria. So, very early, I think that's the best chance to get a large return as an investor. The earlier you can kind of get conviction, the bigger the potential reward is. Big problems. I mean, to a certain extent, it's probably somewhat defined, right? Like people kind of tend to look at these normal categories of TAM and SAM and SOM, but I think it's more than that, right? I'm looking a lot at problems in emerging markets and a lot in Latin America. And there's a lot of things that affect everyday people that have been kind of solved in the US or in Europe or in China that are still, big problems in these other markets. It could be simple things like, how do I find an apartment? How do I find a mortgage? How do I how do I go and get something paid for without having a bank account? How do I get a credit card when there's no credit cards really in my country, or 1% of the population has credit cards? How do I get access to my salary because I get paid once a month, but I have expenses, every day. So a lot of these kind of fairly, routine questions that are really big problems that kind of affect every person. Those are the kind of problems that I want to work on solving. And, I think you can solve them through relatively simple solutions. These things have already been solved in other markets. And, I think a lot of investors want to think of themselves as geniuses, right? And they want to think about how they're smarter and better than everybody else. And I really don't want to have to do that. I really don't want to have to rely on me being a genius to understand what the company is. I want the company to be simple enough that I can explain it to anybody in, a sentence. I want it to be something that people can just get, because ultimately the customers need to just get it, right? The customers need to be able to understand why this is an issue and why they should be looking at this as a solution. Um, so kind of big problems, simple solutions, very early, business models that are kind of proven. So things that somebody else somewhere has kind of been able to make a real business out of it. I think at the end of the day, people are kind of the same wherever they are. And so if it's something that already has existed somewhere else and you're just adapting it, slightly differently to this other market, it makes a lot of sense to me. And that could even be in more, cutting edge technologies, right? There's things that exist in Web 1 or Web 2.0 that could still be applied to Web 3. Or there's something that has worked in the US that doesn't exist yet in Brazil, or something in Europe that doesn't exist yet in Pakistan or India or Vietnam, right? And so, a model that makes sense where you kind of know that this is going to make money and has the potential to get customers that people, in general like this sort of product. Um, Traction, obviously, the more traction, the better. And that can mean a lot of different things, right? Like, how is the company itself kind of defining their success, right? Is it around revenue, right? Which is ultimately what most people are trying to get to, but it could be around customers or around engagement. What is the progress that they're making, and how can they kind of show that they're making that progress? Great founders who know how to execute. Since these problems are big problems with simple solutions, it really comes down a lot to the execution. That's really where I think the moat gets created. And so people who've had a history of success, a track record, who know how to build the right kind of culture, I think are extremely important in this sort of criteria. And then ultimately, the things that I want to put my own money into, right? Like, is this something that I really want to exist? That, in my ideal world, is this a solution that I want to be a part of, right? There are some problems that people have that I just don't know if I care enough about, or that, like, the solutions that I think are actually inefficient or don't really accomplish what I want to see the world do more of, right? I want to see a world that is more open and more collaborative and more engaged. So if it's something that tries to disrupt, information flow, or something that tries to, create a more protectionist society, it's not really what I want to invest my own money to. That's not really the world I want to live in.
So tell us more about your roles as head of performance marketing at Rappi in Bogotá and head of growth and performance marketing at PayClip in Mexico.
Sure. So, basically, performance marketing is sort of the way that all marketing is kind of headed, where we start to think about what is the impact of our marketing budget, right? And how are we kind of getting a return on this investment that we're making? So, Rappi is Latin America's largest super app, and they are trying to kind of both get more users, get users that are already there more engaged, people that continue to come back, restaurants to sign up, workers to sign up. And so there's all these different kind of parts to that marketplace. And as the head of performance marketing, was basically responsible for understanding where our budget is being spent and what the impact of that spend was. And ultimately, like, what is the return that we're getting, and are we meeting our goals for that budget? And then using analytics and data scientists and experimentation to increase the efficiency of that machine. So, we are, it costs us more money to acquire a user than what we get in terms of our return in this market, but this other market over there is a better market for us. So let's shift our budget from one to the other. On Google, we see people order within, 6 hours, whereas Facebook, it takes 12. So should we shift our budget from one to the other? How does how does that impact what we're doing? Where's the best way that we can get a return for our investment? What is the best way to bring customers back? And how do we kind of continue to create a more efficient marketplace? And then, at Clip, it was really great because I kind of started my career as or started my career in mobile as a product manager, and it was a chance to kind of combine my product experience with this performance marketing. So I led the performance marketing team for Clip, and that also kind of involved similar kind of components of marketing and marketing budget and return and data science. But I also ended up leading their growth team, which was focused on kind of that user journey. So everything kind of related to the customer path once they kind of landed on the website, and using kind of product and engineers and data science to create a more efficient experience for those users. So experimentations around that journey and the checkout experience, the shopping experience, promotions, where do we land them? That whole kind of growth side, what was really kind of my big focus.
How would you compare living in Bogotá, Mexico, and Puerto Rico?
So, they're all kind of very, very different, actually. So Puerto Rico is an island, obviously. It's a territory of the U.S. And so, there's just a lot more, I think, familiarity between the U.S. and Puerto Rico. Bogota has kind of been overlooked, I think, by a lot of people as a tourist destination. They have this history, 30 years ago that kind of gets highlighted a lot in TV. That's not necessarily representative of what's happening now and happening today. But I still feel like the ramifications are there that they're kind of overlooked, and it's an incredibly beautiful country, and I think the people are super nice and super warm. And I think because they don't get as many tourists, I think people are really excited when they kind of meet you as somebody who's not a local, and they really kind of go out of their way to kind of take care of you. Mexico City is the biggest city in kind of North America, right? It's more than 20 million people, so it's huge. It's sprawling. It's chaotic. There's everything you kind of imagine that you ever would want to do. Tons of different types of people. There's something for you, no matter what it is that you like to do. There it is. I think, especially now over the last couple of years, it really has become a place where a lot of people are kind of going to spend more and more time in. So, I think a lot of people from the U.S. are now going and spending a month working remotely from Mexico City, and you're kind of seeing it become a very kind of friendly kind of destination for a lot of people. And so, I think the different cities kind of each have their unique benefits, and I've really enjoyed spending time in all of them.
How has Latin America, and especially the technology and venture capital ecosystem, changed since you joined Rappi in 2019? And what macro predictions do you have for the future of the region?
I think over the last few years, we've really seen a shift, right, in a lot of big ways. When I first joined Rappi, I believe there was only 5 or 6 unicorns in Latin America. And now we have more than 40. When I joined Clip, there wasn't a unicorn in Mexico. Now, Clip is one, but there's also another 3 others. So I think there's 4 or 5 unicorns just in Mexico alone. So we've really seen an explosion throughout the ecosystem. We're seeing it become more and more popular with VC funds. Obviously SoftBank had their fund dedicated to Latin America, but more and more funds are putting people on the ground and having them look at these different markets and different marketplaces. We're seeing companies, expand across Latin America as well. So I think for a long time, companies that were in Brazil were only focused on Brazil, or companies that were in Mexico were only focused on Mexico. And now we're seeing more and more companies try to operate across the ecosystem. And I think there's just been a large speed up in kind of development, I think partially because of COVID-19, when you have a lot more people that are digital, a lot more people that are digital nomads, a lot more technologies kind of getting adopted, and companies that are springing up around these ecosystems.
You worked for Agoda in Thailand before moving to Latin America. What lessons can we learn from Asia about investing in Latin America?
I think it's the same kind of lessons across the board, that at the end of the day, people are the same. And so people want their needs met. And the companies that are, focused on the real needs of the people are going to survive and thrive. One of the interesting things I think you start to see when you look at Asia is kind of the emergence of kind of these mafias. And this is like a positive mafia term, right? Like the tech mafia. And I think that's one kind of big thing that we're starting to see in Latin America as well. And there's, I think Endeavor does some interesting reports on the impact of kind of several key organizations, right? Whether it's kind of Nubank and the ecosystem that's kind of come out of there, or Rappi, or now Latitude, right? Where we're starting to see more and more kind of ecosystems emerge, where people are more collaborative, and that ability to have more kind of partnerships and more education and more discussion, I think is really impactful here. And I think that's one thing that really has emerged in Asia that I'm excited to see really kind of grow within the Latin American ecosystem.
Okay. Finally, I must ask Peter Thiel's famous question, but with a uniquely Semilla.VC twist. What important truth about Latin America do very few people agree with you on?
When we look at the Latin American ecosystem, it's really easy to kind of just focus on Mexico and focus on Brazil, because they end up making roughly 70% of the GDP of Latin America. But I think the companies that emerge from Mexico and emerge from Brazil spend so much time in their own backyard that it's hard for them to really kind of adjust to becoming a multi-country company. And so I think when we think about the companies that are going to emerge, that are going to be truly, across LATAM, I think it's going to be emerging from ecosystems outside of Brazil and Mexico. I think the companies that had to get out of their home market very quickly and build a playbook and a roadmap of how to do that are going to be the ones that are really going to end up being pan LATAM startups.
Okay. Ali, thank you so much for spending the time to be on my Semilla.VC podcast today.
Yeah, it was great being here. Thank you so much.
Okay, that's the Semilla.VC interview with Ali Jamal. Be sure to subscribe and like wherever you view your podcast. Also, check me out on Twitter and LinkedIn, Gorman. See you at the next episode of Semilla.VC.